Proposals to update Ireland's 1937 constitution, removing outdated language on women's roles and family, were overwhelmingly rejected in a double referendum. In light of this, accusations by Senator McDowell against Minister O'Gorman's department of withholding meeting minutes discussing constitutional amendments and accusing the department of a cover-up. This has sparked discussions on transparency in governance. I'm here with Fatima Gunning, journalist with Grip Media. Could you give us a brief introduction about what's happened?
Right, so the government, as you said, they had proposed two constitutional amendments, and one was referred to as the so-called family referendum, whereby they wanted to change the definition essentially of what family means. Like, as you know, the viewers will know, family rights they're a very important part of any legal process in a country, and they wanted to kind of modernize in their own terms the concept of the family to being like, a mother and father who are married with children, to include durable relationships. And now maybe I'll touch on it later on, but there was a lot of confusion as to what this durable relationships means, because there's no definite definition in law. And the second part was the care, so-called care, where they wanted to remove Article 41.2 of the Constitution, which says essentially that, a mother should not be forced out of economic necessity to pursue work outside of the home. So that's essentially all that says. And the government went on a campaign of saying that this was somehow confining women to work in the home, which is, demonstrably ridiculous when you consider that, Ireland has had in recent history 2 female presidents. So, I don't know how either of those ladies were tied to the kitchen sink, but, this is the kind of campaign of misinformation that the government went on in order to encourage people to vote yes. And as we saw, there was a resounding no vote, where in some constituencies, as many as 90% of people voted no to this. So, obviously, in retrospect, we can see that both proposals were deeply unpopular and did not pass.
How could it go so wrong? How could they not see that this was just not going to work?
Well, I think, honestly, the government at the moment, they are deeply unpopular among a lot of people. And some of the reasons behind that is that Ireland has an unprecedented housing crisis at the moment. We have 13,500 people that are homeless now. We have thousands and thousands of people on housing lists. Some people are waiting 10 years and more for local authority housing. We have the government letting in over 100,000 migrants in the form of refugees and asylum seekers over the last 2 years. In spite of this chronic housing crisis, we have 1 million people on hospital waiting lists. So that's basically 1 in 5 people, because there's 5 million of us down here in the Republic. There's 1 in 5 of us are on hospital waiting lists. So, there's all these crises that seem to be never ending, and yet the government is going for what one senator described as the politics of symbol and gesture, removing this language, which, wouldn't have actually given anybody any more rights. It was just like some kind of strange virtue signal feel-good gesture that it was rejected. I think that's why they were kind of skating on thin ice in terms of their general popularity. And I think that there was a significant proportion of voters who, I'm sure that they did actually not support what the government was putting towards them. But I do think that there was an element of kind of slapping the government in the face with this no vote.
And what are these accusations from Senator McDonald against Minister O'Gorman about?
Right, so that's Senator Michael McDowell. He is a very senior political figure. He is the former Minister for Justice, and he's also the former Attorney General. So, you have to kind of take it for granted that this man knows what he's talking about when he speaks about matters of law. So, Minister Roderick O'Gorman, who is he's in the head of the Department of Integration. His department, they decided not to disclose the minutes of 16 meetings that were held across interdepartmental meetings, which were held, I believe, over the course of last year to discuss the possible legal effects should these referendums pass. So he refused to release this information to the public. And you might think, well, wouldn't the public be entitled to know what the chief legal authority in the country, the Attorney General, is saying to the government about the effects of these things that we're being asked to vote on? So Senator McDowell had, accused Roderick O'Gorman and his department of a cover-up when they said that they wouldn't let the people know this, in my opinion, crucial information.
And considering these recent accusations regarding transparency in governance, how can they rebuild back the public's trust after this?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question. And, to go back to my earlier point, this is not something that happened in a vacuum. The government are already deeply unpopular. They're presiding over an immigration system, which, a recent Red C poll showed 75% of the people who surveyed think that Ireland has taken in too many refugees and asylum seekers. We're still accepting unlimited numbers. We've seen the government cut back on the amount of social welfare they're giving to Ukrainian refugees, which I believe was essentially the same as Irish people get up until they cut it back to it was €220 a week, I believe, which is the highest rate in Europe. So that was kind of having a pull effect where a significant amount of Ukrainians who already had refuge in other safe European countries are coming here because you have a better provision for you. Why would you not do that? As I said, the housing crisis is, thundering on. There's more people on the homeless now than there have been in previous years. It's in no way getting better. So when we have a government that's presiding over those disastrous situations and, it doesn't seem to be doing anything material to make them any better, I don't see how the public can rebuild trust in those same politicians. I don't really see how that could happen.
And with the rejection of these proposals to update Ireland's constitution, it's said to have sparked discussions on social values, legal reform. Is it possible to balance traditional values and constitutional modernization? Considering, does this show that it can't be balanced, or what are your views on that?
Well, I think there's this idea that, we're very progressive now and we're very different now. I recently asked questions to the head of the Green Party, Minister Eamon Ryan. And he was saying, well, the Constitution needs to be updated because, men care too. And, it's kind of sexist or whatever that the current wording refers to, mothers or women's duty in the home. And I said to him, yeah, but the reality is that I think it's 96% of care in Ireland is still done by women. So there's this kind of idea that, we should move away from gendered language. But the reality is that, the women are still doing the majority of the care. So I don't really know in what way this kind of push towards progressivism, actually has an effect on the structural reality of society. I would argue that in most cases it probably doesn't.
So, and back to these accusations of a cover-up within Minister O'Gorman's department, it's been raising concerns about accountability. Do you agree that there is a lack of accountability on their behalf?
Yeah, I think, accountability and Irish politicians are, kind of strangers. There's been quite a few political scandals in, the recent past and the not so recent past. And it seems a lot of the time that, there's deep reflection and there's lessons learned, but you never really see actual consequences. You never really see people resigning. We have a Minister for Health at the moment, Stephen Donnelly, and I think the greatest achievement of his political career has been to put, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, to put a tax on sugary drinks when you have 1 million people on the waiting lists to get, basic hospital treatment. So I think in a reasonable situation, somebody whose career has been what I would call an abject failure might, consider stepping down. But that doesn't seem to be the case here at all.
Thank you, Fatima Gunning, a journalist with Grip Media.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Rick's Europe.